The Ultimate Fighting Championship, or the UFC, sells itself as the pinnacle of combat sports, built on skill, discipline, and raw aggression.
I think organized violence is one of the most beautiful things there is.
You can punch, kick, knee, elbow, take a shin to the head. These people are wired differently than the rest of us.
I feel like it's something that I'm addicted to. I'm thinking brutal damage over and over again.
I don't care if I get knocked out or choked unconscious. I'm not scared of the outcome.
I love violence. It's the only place that I feel calm.
The UFC has been valued as a $12 billion business with hundreds of millions of fans around the globe.
Fighting, blood, guts, glory.
I like seeing people bleed and get knocked out.
It is a beautiful sport. It is a violent sport. It is a dangerous sport.
It's now at the heart of the Make America Great movement.
We live in a world where the President of the United States is a close friend and associate of the President of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. I cannot believe I am even uttering those words.
Cage fighting was once banned in some Australian states. Now it's being embraced.
It's incredible how fast it's exploded here.
And our politicians are promoting and paying for the sport.
Unless the government partners with a great organisation like the UFC, won't be able to do it.
The UFC champions free speech.
If it wasn't for the lack of freedom of speech and gun laws here, I could see me living here.
But shuts down its critics.
You have the biggest pussies I've ever seen in the media in my life.
The UFC is very vindictive. You're either with the company or you're against it.
The UFC holds an iron grip on the fighters who risk so much for the spectacle. Only the brave speak up.
We fighters, we've been shortchanged. We've been underpaid.
At a Perth gym, a rising star is training to win gold. Della Maddalena wants to snare the UFC welterweight belt.
I've been given pretty much the top spot. The UFC is the #1 promotion in the world. Everything I've worked for and full confidence that I can get it done. I've got the strong team behind me, the team since I've been at since day one.
We're so in tune, we can move around, and yeah, we don't even have to talk about what we're doing. We're sort of just doing it, you know, like it's almost like hypnotic in the way we can move around with each other.
Jack's training partner is his older brother Josh. As kids, they played rugby, but mixed martial arts eventually won them over. And now, the sport dominates their lives. The young Perth fighter began his professional career with 2 back-to-back losses, but surged ahead with an undefeated streak in the UFC.
The anxieties of watching your brother in a fight with some guy that's trying to kill him is hard. It's not just a physical thing, it's like a mental battle that you're having with each other. It's a mental chess, but it's with dire consequences. You make one slip up, the guy's got your neck, you're asleep, you wake up by someone hitting you with a right hand. Everything has to be calculated, and you're making 100 different calculations in the moment, as well as being exhausted.
Della Maddalena is a hammer. He is awesome. Very good fighter. You know he's a good fighter because I don't mean to be disparaging in any way whatsoever, but his nose doesn't look normal. He is an absolute dynamo. One of these young guys, not just out of Australia, but in this division. He fights at 170 pounds. He is a machete, slashing through what these guys put in front of him.
Do you think about the toll that this sport has on your body?
Nah, I try not to, but obviously it is. Like, getting hit in the head isn't ideal. But trying to obviously not getting hit as much. But it is something, it is a rough sport. I've had injuries, but I try not to think about that too much. That would be tomorrow's problem.
Have you experienced a concussion or like a knockout or anything?
Obviously, with the sport, you do get hit. It is something that happens, but part of the sport, trying to minimise that risk as much as possible is a big part of it.
The world title fight he's training for in Montreal could be his toughest battle yet, and the odds are stacked against him.
He's got his hands full coming up here at UFC 315 against a very good fighter named Belal Muhammad, who's a very different kind of fighter, a more wrestling-based fighter. Once you're at this level of the game, it's a shark tank. You're only fighting for survival.
What do you say to the Australians that watch it and they're just like, why would anybody watch this?
It's so I completely understand why. I don't blame people. Sometimes I meet different people and I sort of try and tell them to, and I can just see their mind sort of thinking like, why the hell do you do that? But I sort of understand where they're coming from because it seems absolutely wild.
Down under in Sydney, Australia, UFC 312 du Plessis versus Strickland 2 is supported by the New South Wales government through its tourism and major events agency, Destination New South Wales.
The UFC stages around 40 big-budget live events each year. The promotion last came to Australia 4 months ago under a 3-event, $16 million sponsorship deal with the New South Wales Labor government.
We know that there's millions of fans who love this sport, who want to be part of it.
I mean, young men, we all love watching people punch each other. It's entertaining. Punch, kicking, and then afterwards we like seeing them get knocked down on the floor, and it's entertaining for us.
I don't know, I just like the violence, I guess, and I kind of want to become a UFC fighter when I grow up, so that's my dream.
The UFC's well-oiled promotional machine staged a series of free fan events ahead of the main fight in Sydney. At the open workouts, South Africa's reigning middleweight champion was supremely confident.
I don't care who steps in there with me, I'm there to take his head off, kill him, finish this fight, and show the world that I'm the best middleweight on this planet.
But his trash-talking opponent was the clear crowd favourite.
Go Sean Strickland, bro! Sean Strickland!
The former undisputed UFC middleweight champion, Sean Strickland!
Hey, what's up, you fucking degenerate cunts? Let's fucking go, man, hey. But I'll tell you what, Dutchman, I'm gonna beat the fuck out of you for 25 minutes.
Sean Strickland is one of the UFC's most controversial fighters,
I love you, motherfuckers.
often going on sexist and racist rants.
I know hate speech is a thing here. It's really hard for me to come to this fucking country.
It's striking how many young guys are here for Strickland. At the front of the crowd, die-hard fan, George Petroziklis.
Yeah, that's my guy. That's my guy.
Oh, there's my man fucking Georgie. Georgie, get the fuck over here, dude. Let's go. All right, Georgie, put these on, you fucking pussy.
Strickland was one of the guys I grew up with. I get to punch my favourite fighter and get to meet him.
What do you like about Strickland? I mean, to most people, he's a pretty wild human.
For me, he's a role model because, like, he's real. Like, that's why I love him as a fighter, but as a person, he's real as it gets. He'll tell you as it is. Like, he's a man. Like, yeah, you may say the most outrageous stuff, but that's why you have to love him.
The UFC has made an art of leveraging social media to build the brand. UFC influencer Nina Marie Daniele has more than 5 million followers on TikTok.
Nina, say what's up to the fucking people.
What's up, fucking people?
Call them degenerate fucking pussies. I'm just joking.
He's great. What's there not to love? I mean, he's loudmouth. He says what he wants. He's opinionated. He's not cookie cutter. He's not going to sugarcoat anything. He's going to tell you exactly how it feels. And if you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, you don't like it, you know?
Oh, is it good to be back in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia? Thank y'all for coming out to the ceremonial weigh-in. Dana White is in the building.
In a brutal league built on star power, UFC boss Dana White is the ringmaster.
We don't tell anybody what to say, what not to say, what to do. They all have their own personalities. Whoever you are, that's what I'm selling.
All right, Sydney, first week, grab a minute with Sean Strickland. I'm not sure.
Dana White has rarely put the brakes on Sean Strickland. Instead, he defends freedom of speech.
Sean Strickland is known for saying outrageous things at press conferences and on the microphone. He's gratuitously racist, sexist. He does so in a way that is, I don't want to say celebrated by the UFC, but they certainly lean into the controversy that he generates.
Do you think the UFC have a responsibility to regulate fighters' behaviour outside the ring, given their vast influence?
I would say so. But then I think they probably view that sort of behaviour as part of the marketing. But if you were trying to project a very positive narrative around the sport and how it's all about discipline, it's all about control, you know, you can't win a fight unless you have those qualities, then that's perhaps something they need to think about. But I get why they let it free, because it's good for their marketing.
We keep letting these fucking women fight, dude. Who's gonna make our dinner? I'm gonna have to go to the store and make that shit myself, and that will never fucking happen under my watch. What do you got?
I think there's always the Sean Stricklands of the world. It just so happens to be that he gets a microphone put in his face and he's able to share his vision. There are a lot of people that think like him, and it's not just within MMA, or, you know, it's not just because he's an MMA fighter. I think there are a lot of guys and some girls that will think like him.
It's fight day, and the fans have paid big money to be here.
800 and something. Don't look at me like that.
More than 18,000 were in the stadium. Those who couldn't afford tickets watched from the pub. For all his big talk, Strickland struggled to keep up with his opponent and lost the fight.
All right, gang. The attendance was 18,253, $7.7 million gate. And I want to thank New South Wales government and Destination New South Wales for their ongoing support of the UFC.
But Dana White berated the Australian media who'd slammed that partnership.
But listen, for a place that is so tough, and the people, everything on land and the water can kill you. You have the biggest pussies I've ever seen in the media in my life. I saw a story.
The UFC boss batted away any concerns about Sean Strickland's tirades.
And it physically made me sick. We're going to take guys and girls that say a lot of things and do a lot of things. I'm a big believer in free speech. And, you know, it probably seems worse when you come here because your media are such weak human beings.
There's that last moment where he has the back and he can't finish with the choke. Go back.
Luke Thomas has covered the UFC for close to 2 decades and now hosts a combat sports podcast. He loves the fight game, but he dares to call out problems when he sees them.
It's something that has not made it. I don't know if there's an organization in sports in the United States more censorious than them. They don't like reporting on their business, even when it's accurate. They don't like other people editorializing about their business. So to me, it's like, yeah, if you want to say outrageous things in the MMA world, congratulations, you will be able to. But if you want to say things like, I think the UFC is a monopoly and that's bad for the sport, consequences are going to come your way.
Welcome to the stage, boys.
Dana White has welcomed many polarizing figures to his events. Andrew and Tristan Tate are now facing charges of human trafficking and rape. The brothers were faded when they showed up at Power Slap, a fight promotion owned by Dana White.
You know, it's even better than I thought. The atmosphere is incredible.
That was actually shocking. That was actually shocking. And in fact, it was so shocking that I noticed that not insignificant portions of the American right were also appalled.
America, baby. Culture. Only America.
The social media influencers maintain their innocence, but their misogynistic content resonates with a large audience of disaffected young men.
Theo gets away with everything. Does he? Yeah. I don't until he doesn't. Yeah. Tell me about it. Welcome to America. I don't know how long they're letting you stay. Yeah, me neither.
Why would you do something like that if you're in charge of like a big business and you're ostensibly trying to cast a wide net and you have relationships with literally Disney vis-a-vis ESPN and everything else? You would act that way if you were acting with total impunity.
Please welcome President-elect Donald J. Trump, First Lady.
When Donald Trump declared victory last November, Dana White was on stage among the family and friends.
Thank you very much. Wow. We also have a man, Dana White, who has done some job.
As the president-elect thanked his supporters, he gave a shout-out to the UFC boss.
He's a tough guy.
This is karma, ladies and gentlemen. He deserves this.
Within a fortnight, fans and fighters celebrated the president-elect at UFC 309.
This is a huge coup for them. The leader of the free world is a noted UFC fan. This is a thing that happens in our sport that doesn't happen in any other sport.
This was a resounding endorsement by Trump's support base in the UFC.
Fighters, when they win, will pay tribute to him like he's an emperor. So it's a really conspicuous part of the UFC brand and product in a way that it hasn't been previously, and I don't know if there's a precedent for that in professional sports.
The UFC kind of trained a generation of young men, or at least at a bare minimum, pushed them, guided them anyway, whatever the proper description is, in a right-leaning direction, specifically related to the 2024 election, although in other ways more generally by having, not just Trump, but a number of right-wing figures at these events and, of course, prominent in the fight world. And that was absolutely instrumental in the election.
Dana White's importance to Donald Trump was underlined at the presidential inauguration, with the UFC boss seated with former presidents.
This was absolutely, utterly unfathomable that a fight promoter would be in the company of the most important leaders in this country's present history. For a fight promoter to be in these hallowed institutions and these the most elite of the elite of the elite, I mean, it speaks to, again, their success as a company. It speaks to Dana White's ambition. And it speaks to the kind of circle that Donald Trump seems to keep.
The UFC was established just over 3 decades ago as a no-holds-barred contest between different martial arts.
It was struggling, could not financially make it. They're being banned in state after state.
Casino moguls Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta paid $2 million for the Ailing Sports League in 2001. And Dana White was appointed UFC president. But the UFC struggled to find venues and an audience. Dana White told a Republican convention that Trump's offer to host 2 UFC events at his casino was a lifeline back when the promotion was fighting for credibility.
Donald championed the UFC before it was popular, before it grew into a successful business, and I will always be grateful. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
And then something kind of magical happened, something called The Ultimate Fighter, a reality show here in the United States circa 2005 that the UFC paid to put on television.
The reality show put 16 MMA fighters together to compete for a UFC contract. Nate Quarry was one of them.
The Ultimate Fighter really set the UFC off on their pathway to success. And it really brought the whole world of MMA into every household, and they could see we weren't just animals, we weren't just idiots throwing punches, and this wasn't a street fight. We were skilled, trained athletes who were happy to finally be able to show our skills to a national and worldwide audience.
By 2016, the UFC had carved out its place as a global entertainment brand, with lucrative media deals and huge arena events. The business bought for $2 million in 2001 was sold for $4 billion to Hollywood talent agency WME IMG.
And everybody was like, it's not a small, tiny company, it's a massive company. Also, it's a massively profitable company. And the question became, why is it worth so much? And that's what I think people start realizing, especially the fighters, oh, it's worth a lot because it's profitable, because they pay us much less than they do in other industries.
In 2023, the UFC merged with wrestling promotion WWE to become part of entertainment giant TKO Group Holdings.
The growth in revenue hasn't stopped. You'd think there'd be a plateau, that they'd maximize what they can make, but no, every year they find a new way to monetize something new. They get bigger and bigger broadcast deals, and currently, the last year, they hit $1.4 billion in revenue.
There's another dimension to the lucrative UFC money-making machine. Many fighters who've given their lives to the company are doing it tough.
They're treating it like a business while trying to get me to consider it as a passion, something that I should just be doing for the love of it. We fighters, we've been shortchanged. We've been underpaid. We deserve better.
I'm pissed, and this isn't fair, and this isn't right.
Dana White has consistently pushed back on criticisms that the company underpays its fighters.
Well, you didn't get paid enough. You know why you didn't get paid enough? Because you didn't fucking deserve it. That's why.
The guys who actually bring all the value are the ones who make all the money. This is my company. Who the fuck are you to tell me how to pay my people?
How would you characterize the way the UFC shares its revenue?
Ruthlessly exploitatively. The reality is that the vast majority of the UFC's fighters, including Australian fighters, might not be making a living wage.
My fight name was Nate Quarry. I fought for them a total of 10 times. I was mostly known for having heavy hands, hitting people and dropping them, knocking them out. And I was told over and over again, shut up and fight. Your job is to fight.
All right. Nate Quarry says fighters have been punished if they've challenged the UFC over money or conditions.
They just get blacklisted. They get cut. They get put on the undercard. They are given opponents that aren't going to be a good matchup for them. The UFC is very vindictive. You're either with the company or you're against it.
He's among the few who've stood up to the company.
I've been called a scab. I've been called a sellout by fighters that I respected. I was more than happy, willing to stand up and fight for what I believe in.
Nate was one of the lead plaintiffs in a long-running class action in the United States, which accused the UFC of unlawful anti-competitive behavior. A key allegation was that the UFC suppressed fighter pay through restrictive contracts and business practices.
During the antitrust lawsuit, during the discovery phase, we found documents from the UFC, their breakdowns of their yearly reports, lender presentations where they detailed how much every year they were paying fighters and how much they planned to pay fighters going forward after the sale. And it showed that fighters made, on average every year, below 20% of the total revenue. The UFC's success, their valuation, their stock price, all that is dependent on making sure the fighters do not get a bigger share of the pie.
We are not barroom brawlers. We are professional athletes. I am a fighter. That's what I do. And to see the UFC take advantage of us, without us, they have nothing. No one is buying a pay-per-view to see Dana White sit in the middle of the cage and wax poetic about whatever he has to say. It's the fighters that bring the value.
The UFC tried to get the lawsuit dismissed, but the judge found the company had used a variety of ruthless coercive techniques to prevent fighters from becoming free agents. Along with the restrictive provisions of the contracts, this had a devastating effect on fighters' ability to control their careers and compensation. The court found the company's tactics were anti-competitive and approved the class action. This meant the case could proceed to trial, but the fighters decided they needed cash now.
And we reached out to the fighters and said, tell us your stories. Do you want us to settle this lawsuit? Will this money that you would get from the lawsuit, would that benefit you? We had all these fighters write out their story and what they needed this money for, and it truly was heartbreaking.
More than 100 fighters wrote letters urging the judge to approve a $375 million settlement agreement.
This would be truly life-changing money for me and other members of the class.
Without this support, I would likely need to file bankruptcy and apply for disability to manage my basic living and healthcare needs.
I've struggled with my mental health for years and endured severe bouts of depression.
I fear that during my career, I have suffered traumatic brain injury. These funds would allow me to obtain the healthcare I need and keep a roof over my head and food on my table.
I'm noticing symptoms common with TBI and CTE, including addiction, depression, mood swings, and irritability. I spend days in bed suffering from bouts of paranoia, fear, and anxiety.
More than a decade after Nate and several other plaintiffs launched their legal challenge, a US judge approved the $375 million settlement.
Get our hips in proximity.
Around 1,100 fighters who competed between December 2010 and June 2017 are eligible to make a claim.
I have 19 screws in me. I lost count at 10 surgeries. I have 13 screws in my face. I have 6 screws in my back. My right pectoral's been torn off, reattached. My left bicep torn off, reattached. Left ankle surgery, facial reconstruction, nose redone a few times. I've taken a lot of damage, and I'm still a relatively young man at 53. I am very concerned personally about head trauma and how it will affect my latter years.
How strong are you? Show your muscles.
I have a 5-year-old son, a 3-year-old daughter, a 2-year-old daughter. So I am very concerned in 10, 15 years. Am I going to be able to remember their names? Am I going to be able to remember the journey that got me here?
You worry about the long-term effects that the sport might have?
I worry about how I used to train. That's for sure. When I was younger, we trained a lot harder. We sparred a lot harder. Now I'm a little bit more careful, I guess, with my brain health. I do a lot of training not to get hit, so I'm not so concerned about my brain health anymore because I'm a lot smarter and a lot more skilled.
Bec Rawlings has been one of the trailblazers for Australian female fighters. She started training in her early 20s and fought her way into a women's mixed martial arts promotion called Invicta. Her goal was always to sign with the UFC, and in 2014, her big break arrived.
When I got the phone call and it was Dana White, I answered and I knew his voice straight away, and he's like, "We've signed you to the UFC, you're going to be a part of the Ultimate Fighter."
Tough lady, super tough lady, very, very tough mentally, tough physically as well. You know, had some good wins. You know, she has very memorable identity, very memorable tattoos, as a matter of fact, which is hard to do in MMA. You know, I think she's been a flag bearer for Aussie combat sports.
I don't care if I get knocked out or choked unconscious. I'm not scared of the outcome. My biggest fear is not going out there and putting on a show.
UFC fighters are signed up as independent contractors. For Bec, this meant she was only paid when she fought.
It was paycheck to paycheck. Look, I wasn't making much money, but it was worth it. I had a goal and I had, a dream that I was chasing, and I sacrificed a lot. My family sacrificed a lot to chase those dreams. But, you know, it was worth it. I couldn't imagine myself in an office. I couldn't imagine myself working in a 9-to-5 job. It's just not me. I think I would go crazy.
And what does that sacrifice look like, you know, living paycheck to paycheck?
It really just put me in a position where I had to take fights. Even if those fights weren't ideal for me, I had to take every fight that was given to me because I needed to make the money and to stay relevant, really.
She says she struggled to meet the stringent weight requirements for her class.
So I was, you know, starving myself. Every fight camp revolved around me making weight, not getting better. And it really just sucked the love and life out of me. I fractured my femoral neck in my hip, running and starving myself. I was in San Diego training for that. I was 6 weeks deep into my fight camp and then I had to pull out of my fight. So not only was I 6 weeks away from my kids, I broke my hip and I had no money. So, and I was in the UFC, I was in the pinnacle of the sport and had no money. So that was really a low point in my career where I was like, why am I doing this? What the hell for? No, I get it.
After several losses, the UFC dumped her.
My legs.
Do fighters get a good deal?
A good deal within money? Depends. Depends if you're a top fighter or not. I feel like they could do better. Fighters get taken advantage of a lot because we want to fight and we want to be on the world stage, so they know that they can pay you less, and they know that if you don't take that fight, there will be some other idiot behind you with their hand up wanting to fight. So I think the power is within the fighters, and once the fighters realise that, we could start getting paid more.
Bec Rawlings is still fighting and put up her hand for a share of the class action settlement.
We deserve to be recompensated for not being paid what we deserve. And even though we all signed the contracts aren't fair and they really held the monopoly, and that's why they are getting sued. So, and I think it'll help inspire, you know, up-and-coming fighters to know that they have the power and that they don't have to accept less.
Bec's also become an advocate for survivors of domestic violence. She says she's inspired to help others after escaping a brutal relationship.
I've always been very vocal about my experience with domestic violence just because I feel like it's important to raise awareness. And staying silent to me felt like I was keeping his secret, and I felt like he needed to be outed and shamed. I think staying silent is weak in that sense. I feel like talking about it and sharing your experiences in hopes that it can help someone else is really strong and important to do. Domestic violence doesn't discriminate. It can happen to anyone, and I'm a fighter. I knew how to fight, and it still happened to me.
Bec Rawlings is carving out a successful career in a global bare-knuckle boxing promotion and is hoping for a fight in Australia later this year.
Now I'm outside the UFC, I feel like it was definitely a life-changing thing for me. It was for the good. I still left with a bitter taste in my mouth just because I feel like I didn't fight to my potential there. But I learnt a lot, and I've grown as a fighter from being in that company, so it was something. I can't even say it was fun, but it was something.
Tyson Pedro is also waiting for a payday from the UFC class action.
A lot of people ask me, how do I get into the UFC, or I want to make this a profession? I tell them all, don't do it. You're going to go through hell, you're not going to get paid well for it, and you have to just go through so much stuff that just won't make sense to anyone else.
Over an 8-year career, Tyson had 11 UFC fights. He spent a long time laid off with injury and struggled to make ends meet.
Can you break down what a UFC payday actually looks like?
So entry-level fight is usually 10 and 10. Well, for me it was 10 and 10. 10 to show and 10 to win. And if you don't win, that's already half your pay gone.
$10,000 for a fight plus $10,000 for a win might sound reasonable until you factor in the costs he incurred as a professional athlete.
How much does it cost to put together a camp for a professional fight?
Depending on how you do it, like, I'm not saying I'm good with money. So some of my camps would cost 40, 50,000. So you're in the red, for sure. Well, I was.
That's obviously my choice going over to New Zealand. I know that.
Tyson Pedro spoke candidly about the financial challenges when he announced his UFC retirement more than a year ago.
Not anymore. With the deductions and the loss of the fight tonight, I'm probably going to have to rob someone in the car park. So if anyone's got any money on him, who's got the most on him?
Can you tell me what was going through your head in that final emotional press conference?
So, and I haven't told anyone this, but the amount, I got an advance for that fight because I was behind for payments for my camps. And the amount that was on the final check, people would freak out if they saw how much was on that, considering how much I just put out on the for my fight camp and that. So my last 3 fights especially, I've gone in ready to die. Like the night before, I've written, if this is the last fight, this is how I want to go out. So the fact that I'm willing to die for that amount of money, I think that was one of the big reasons when that check came through that I was like, no, I'm going to ride my own path.
The path he's chosen is professional boxing, where the pay is better.
What's your relationship like now with the UFC?
I'm fine with the UFC. Like, I have no animosity whatsoever with the UFC. They created like what I've got going on now, but for sure, it's been a long road.
Outside the UFC's world of professional mixed martial arts, tens of thousands of amateurs train for self-defense, fitness and discipline. And there are clubs all around Australia.
And it takes a lot of courage, whether male or female, to walk into a gym that teaches MMA or that type of sport, because it's daunting. It's not like you're walking into a regular workout gym to try and lift some weights or jump on a treadmill. That might be daunting in itself if you haven't trained in a while or you're unfit, whatever else. But walking into an MMA gym, hoping that you're not going to be cannon fodder, would be quite daunting. So we try to make it as easy as possible.
Here. Okay, and that here.
John Donohue is one of Australia's most credentialed coaches in mixed martial arts.
Here. Okay, so that foot should land here.
He holds multiple black belts and has trained alongside several of the UFC's Hall of Famers. But he's equally committed to working with the hundreds of young people who train at his gym each week.
What kind of transformations have you seen in the young people that come to sign up to your gym?
We've had some guys here who have some trauma from early childhood, from either abuse from parents or so many different things. They'll come up and say, thank you, basically. And I'm sure every gym's the same. It's not that we're anything special, but it's just that thank you of, you've really helped me deal with and understanding pressure and how to deal with it and respond correctly in my world outside, whether it be at work, whether it be at family or whatever else. It helps me keep my cool, being calm under pressure.
It's too easy and too dismissive to throw the UFC and mixed martial arts out as some kind of nefarious activity, particularly for young people, when the overwhelming majority experience for this sport has been positive.
Some Australian state governments are jumping on board the power and influence of the UFC.
This sport, mixed martial arts in particular, does promote healthy lifestyles. The truth is that it's very difficult for governments to get through to young men in particular about positive relationships, healthy lifestyles.
I've got to start where I just was. Tariffs, tariffs, tariffs. Trump is always in our camp.
Political pollster and former ALP strategist Cos Samaras is a UFC fan.
But we've heard some very different...
What do you make of the New South Wales government's very public endorsement of the UFC this year?
Understanding that their base likes that sport. If you're in politics and you want to genuinely tip your hat to some of the communities that you represent, you ask for support from, then acknowledging their culture and their favourite pastimes and supporting those things is very important.
The New South Wales government told Four Corners its investment in the UFC had injected tens of millions of dollars into the state's economy, outperforming expectations by around 50%.
Please, but coming nice and close.
Western Australia is hoping for a similar outcome.
This wasn't in the job description. I'm delighted today to announce a historic partnership between TKO, the parent company of UFC and WWE, and the Western Australian government.
The expanded deal was announced just before the last WA state election. There were promises of a boost to the WA economy. But the tourism minister wouldn't reveal how much taxpayers' money was being spent to entice TKO to Perth.
We set down a budget of $76 million for our events budget for this financial year, so it's within that budget. We're competing with other jurisdictions around the world. We're competing with other states of Australia, so these are commercial in confidence. But what we do after the event is we then release the visitation numbers, the economic impact numbers.
Well, it's commercial in confidence with taxpayers' money, so let's just tell the taxpayers what their money's being spent on. It's essentially an entertainment juggernaut that is making hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars around the world. So to see the government going in this direction really is quite exasperating for those of us who care about the effects of brain injury.
The government will say that there's a ripple-on effect from this sport that has huge economic benefits for the state.
Well, I don't think they're accounting for the economic effect even of the health issues that can arise from having a culture in which blows to the head are encouraged. When people see their favourite fighter get knocked out, what they have to understand is that that represents a brain injury that we know in future can lead to all sorts of problems for that person, including early dementia.
The UFC provided a statement to Four Corners saying the company has invested billions of dollars building the sport that has benefited thousands of athletes. The UFC has become the gold standard for athlete health and safety in all of combat sports, on brain health research and anti-doping. The UFC has continually reviewed and strengthened health and safety protocols to protect the athletes who compete in the octagon.
Gentlemen, the man you have all been waiting for. He is the UFC welterweight champion, Jack Della Maddalena!
A few weeks ago, Jack Della Maddalena won by unanimous decision to become the UFC's new welterweight world champion.
Yeah, it's a real honour to be the first Western Australia to bring this belt.
Yeah, super proud. My little brother on the world stage. We always knew he could do it. It's like a surreal feeling, but he still had to get in and do it, and he fucking did it.
It was a fantastic fight. I think Jack Della Maddalena really announced himself as a force in the UFC. Jack is the third Australian to bring a title back to Australia. So we're really punching above our weight, and he's really leading that charge along with Alexander Volkanovski.
Jack Della Maddalena wants to return to the octagon as soon as possible. For now, he's the world champion. What happens from here will be determined by the UFC.
And how long will he be at the top of the sport? Well, law of averages tells us he will probably be at the very top for a year, 2 max, maybe 3. But again, it's a very short time that he gets to maximize what he's going to make. And then afterwards, he will have to live the rest of his life with the injuries and damage that his body's gone through from fighting.
I always tell fighters when they ask me for advice when it comes to fighting, first off, treat this like a business. Because at the end of the day, if you don't, you will be left broken.